And there we are. Mary Joyce, welcome to the Edge Television broadcast.
Thank you. I used to live out in Texas for a couple of years, and I used to miss the cowboy hats when I moved on the other side of the Mississippi.
Well, there you go. We got a genuine Stetson right there. You know, this is 3.5 beaver right here.
It looks real. It absolutely looks real.
And for it also helps to fight the New World Order because I've got it aluminum foil lined on the inside.
Very tricky. I hope it worked for you.
Well, it did, but lately, man, with 5G coming on, I got to double the amount of tinfoil in there because the beams are shooting me in the head all the time.
I hear you. Even if all of us are probably getting hit all the time.
Well, Mary, you're looking good over there. What an excellent picture. We appreciate you coming on the Edge Television broadcast. First time here. You've been recommended to the show several times. Of course, I've watched several of your videos. I saw you over there with L.A. Marzulli having some fun over there talking about things. But, man, you've done a lot of research, and you have a totally different take that we've experienced here on the program. I think you'll bring something to the table on the whole Bigfoot / Sasquatch genre. But before we do, would you mind introducing yourself to the Edge audience, who you are, what you're about, kind of things, what you do?
Okay, my name's Mary Joyce. Right now, I'm probably best known for a website that I edit called skyshipsovercachers.com. And we started that back in 2008 because there were so many UFOs being seen over a mountaintop town here in western North Carolina. And the name of the town is Cachers. And since then, the website's expanded way beyond that. We do all sorts of subjects. We've got a lot of mysteries here in the mountains. We've got Bigfoot, and we've got Cherokee Little People. We've got secret underground bases. And, of course, we had the UFOs. And there's just lots of stuff happening around here. Mm-hmm. Before that, I was in the corporate world, and I worked for major newspapers. And I guess my newspaper background is coming through with this project.
Mm. And you also have something over there called Brown Mountain. I mean, there's a whole movie made on the Brown Mountain lights, UFOs over there too.
Yeah, it's not too far. It would probably be about an hour and a half drive from where I am. Mm-hmm. It's further east.
Sounds like North Carolina area over there is like an epicenter, a thin place perhaps. Some would call it would you call it paranormal activity, or would you just call it normal activity, really?
Of course, it doesn't fit into most people's normal, and I truthfully didn't expect to find all this stuff when I moved to North Carolina. It's been a big, eye-opening surprise for me, too.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it?
Well, I guess that's a good thing. I probably would be bored to death if we didn't have surprises around the corners.
Mm-hmm. Well, you certainly have been surprised, and you've learned a lot of things along the way. And a lot of things that you've learned, you put into various books. And of course, those books are up there on Amazon. And I think you list some of those on your website as well. And particularly your latest book about the Sasquatch. And I got to say, now, do you interchange Sasquatch and Bigfoot, or do you think they're two different beings?
They're just different names for the same
thing. Okay.
There are variations in Bigfoot. They're not all the same, mm-hmm. but the terms are interchangeable.
And the reason I ask because your book here has one of the friendliest covers I've ever seen for Bigfoot. One of the nicest, I guess I should say.
Well, that was a big surprise to me and a whole lot of other people. I've done about more than 70 articles on the website since 2009, and about Bigfoot. And the more I learned, the more I realized it was a much more complicated creature with a lot of very human characteristics.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not going to say he looks like Harry the Hendersons, but what you've done there is, I think what people can see is that you've changed the sort of the projection of Bigfoot from a scary monster that should scare the crap out of people to somebody that maybe, wait a minute, maybe we need to look at it maybe in a different light, so to speak.
Don't get me wrong. If a Bigfoot walked through my office door right now, my heart would probably start beating at 10,000 miles an hour. But at the same time, I have seen the good side of a Bigfoot, and I think people need to understand the whole picture.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good, and that's really, and again, you're bringing a very interesting take to that. And I guess if a Bigfoot walked in this movie or in this studio here, I might have to reach for my 45 because I can't deal with it. I can't deal with him in the studio, especially if I'm broadcasting.
I hear you. I hear you.
I mean, it's gonna. He's clumsy. And he's gonna mess stuff up. He's gonna knock the camera over. It's gonna be bad, Mary.
Yeah, just use a stun gun though. Don't kill him.
Well, okay, I won't kill him. Maybe make him nick him or something. But no. But if I had a stun gun, wouldn't it take 2 or 3? I mean, these guys are usually what, 8 feet tall, 500 pounds.
That's pretty typical. They can be bigger than that. Some can be a little bit smaller, but most of them are in the 8 to 9 foot size.
Mm-hmm. I see in the live chat, Jasper says Sasquatch in Canada, but Sasquatch is just about everywhere, isn't he?
There's variations on this creature all around the world. They're just called by different names. Mm-hmm. In the Far East and Russia, they're called a Yeti. And I think there's many other names, which I probably can't rattle off right now. Mm-hmm. Sasquatch, Yeti, and Bigfoot are the most famous names.
Yeah, in Russia, it's the Alma.
That's another name in Russia. And they also use the term Yeti.
That's easy for me to remember because I had an aunt one time named Alma, and I definitely put her in a Sasquatch category.
I'm sure she'd be thrilled to hear that.
She might smack the old cowboy's hat off his head, but she did, so she can't really do that. But all right, so now, have you ever went out, say, to look for evidence of the Bigfoot?
Yeah, we've reported a lot of evidence. If you're asking me about my firsthand experiences, there was one, I'll call him a good old boy. He was probably about in his 40s, had been raised on one of these mountaintops, and he took me in his truck on one of these single lane rocky roads, and we parked his truck, and then he took me about a half a mile off the road. He actually had a machete with him so he could cut some of the weeds and stuff out of the way, and he was taking me to see where some of the Bigfoot caves were. And what I found the most interesting was that as we began to enter that forest or woodland, we heard this whistle that sounded like a bird, but not quite exactly like a bird. And then off in the distance that we were headed, there was like an answer with this same like artificial bird call. And then it went silent. And both he and the gentleman I was with, we felt like one Bigfoot was warning the other Bigfoot that these humans were on the way, be careful. And we also saw 2 Bigfoot tracks that were on a steep incline as we went in that direction, which kind of supported the fact that this really was Bigfoot territory. The biggest cave that I saw when they took me back there was about 8 feet across and about 5 feet high. I got pretty close to it. I have pictures of it in my book, but I wasn't brave enough to go in it. I could not see the back of the cave, so there was some depth to it. Mm-hmm.
I've got an audio that's on that I pulled from your website. It was a link, and it's supposed to be Bigfoot sound. You mind if I play that?
Oh, I would love it.
All right, let's see if you recognize this. Maybe this is even what you're talking about. Now, was that one creature or several creatures?
We've had several recordings on the website. Is that the one that's labeled Samurai Warrior? Or is that a different one?
Yeah, no, that's it.
That's it. Well, it goes on longer than that.
Yeah,
and
it does.
Scott Nelson, who was with the Navy as a crypto analyst for about 30 years, he analyzed that. And he said in order to understand it, you had to slow it way down because the communication is very fast. And when you could slow it down, you could begin to hear words. And he picked up words that sounded like different human languages. And it's believed that the Bigfoot do pick up from us humans. And one of the conversations that was on there when he slowed it down, first of all, there was one between a male and a female Bigfoot, and it sounded so human-like because the female says when it was slowed down, said, "Are you talking to them?" And the male sort of sheepishly replied in slow motion, "No, I won't." And it just sounded like a couple kind of interacting. Another one was mostly interested in food, and he said, "Me, what, food, plen, food," which sounds like "me want food, plenty food." So there's a lot of variation in the sounds that they make. Definitely have a language.
I know a lot of times people say when they encounter Bigfoot, typically out in the forest, that they have stones thrown at them or sticks. And I can tell you that I've been in a place where that happened. Rocks were coming out of nowhere. And I would think that if the creature wanted to injure me and the people I was with, they could have. I would think they could hit the target because just been experts out in the wilderness like that. But it did seem like they were more inclined to just say scare you out of their territory.
They want to be left alone. I don't hear about them hitting people with those rocks. That seems to be a common way that they try to scare people off. They also try to scare people off with their howling. And usually one of those methods is effective, and most people will take off. And that's all they want. They just don't want to be bothered. The only time that I've ever been aware of any violence coming from the Bigfoot is usually with hunters. And I would imagine if you and I were being shot at, we might not be too friendly to whoever had the gun either. But other than that, you just don't hear those kind of stories.
By the way, welcome Wendy McGee, Raul Sanchez, Overbill Automotive, The Other Side, Waldo, and Doreen, all in the live chat. By the way, Mary, Joyce, Barbara Briggs says special hello to you. So a lot of people kind of follow you and appreciate the work that you do. Now, when we're talking about Bigfoot, there is a sort of a family aspect to it that you talk about in your book. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
There's a wonderful gal that I got to know when I went to a convention, and I was able to spend time with her and interview her. And I've included 3 of her stories in my book, and each one comes with photos. She's been able to communicate with the Bigfoot since she was a child, and she's so good at it that when Dr. Igor Burtsev, it's Burtsev, who's with the International Hominology Institute in Siberia, Russia, he invited her there. And you might find this interesting. This all got started because of some Irishmen. There's a group called the Paddy Power, and they put out a bet saying that if anybody could give them proof of a Yeti or a Bigfoot, they would give them 100 pounds on a 1 pound bet. So Dr. Igor picked them up on this, and they ended up having media people and researchers go to Siberia to a cave that was very, very active. And probably the thing I found the most interesting was that there was a Bigfoot nesting cave within a cave. And according to Robin McRae, who's the one that communicates with them very easily, that was where the Bigfoot females would go to have their babies. And there's a picture of Dr. Igor in that Bigfoot nest, so you can see how big it is. And after that trip, she came back to the United States, and she had her first encounter with a mother Bigfoot and her baby. And that's a very rare thing. I've only talked to her and one other person who have been actually able to see a baby Bigfoot with the parents' approval. And she lives with in a lot of land, and there's forest land, and she looked out along the tree line and saw somebody or something that looked quite human, and she went out to see who it was, and here was this mother Bigfoot with her baby. And I did the proportions on it, and the size of this little guy compared to his mother was about this in proportion to a human mother and a brand new born infant. So it was quite young. And the woman said the mother was about 9.5 feet tall. And this wasn't guesswork. What she did was she made a mental note of where the top of the head of the mother came on a tree, and then she later went out and measured it. The cutest part of that story is that the little guy would go up to a tree, climb up about 2.5, 3 feet, and then climb down, go to the next tree and do the same thing. And the mother was always right there behind him to make sure he was okay. And when he went too far, she picked him up and brought him back. But and the whole game would start over again. These kind of things are just not common at all. And the other story that I have, which I include in the book, and it's just a brief thing. There's another man who's been able to become friends with the Bigfoot. They kind of moved into his land when loggers in the area began to cut down the territory the Bigfoot had been living in. And so they moved into his land. And what's really neat is on a Christmas Eve in 2016, there was a baby Bigfoot born, and the parents let him see it. And I just thought that was so neat that it happened on a Christmas Eve.
Wow. Christmas story there for you.
Yeah, so, a little bit different.
So we have friends that live in the Ozark Mountains, and one of them, their trail cam took a picture of what he said was a monkey. And it clearly wasn't a monkey. And now after all that I've heard about the Bigfoot, I have to believe now that it was a Bigfoot child. Now, there were several other indicators that we conclude that there may have been Bigfoot activities. One of them was we found stacks of rocks in the middle of the mountains there on a bridge. They were just rocks stacked. I don't know how long it took somebody to do that, or what kind of rocks it takes they weren't just flat rocks. They were different shapes. And so somebody had some pretty steady hands. So, I mean, it could have been a kid. I mean, that's true. But then we also found things in the road where weeds were like ripped up and then made X's here in various places. I mean, it could have been witch activity for that matter, but it sure did seem that there may have been some Bigfoot activity. Let me tell you this story here, Mary Joyce. We're having a guest come on in December. His name is Steve Ishdahl. Have you ever heard of him?
I do not know him, no.
Okay. All right. Well, he's a Canadian, for all those up there in Canada watching the show. Hey, I always say that. That's my shout out to him, my Canadian bros. But he has been getting a lot of, he's seen Bigfoot, and he doesn't like to see them at all. He's not like hunting for Bigfoot. It just sort of comes that way. But he told a story, and this is kind of goes to your, maybe Bigfoot aren't always the monster that they're portrayed. He said a rancher up there, or a rancher sent him a story that some animal was killing his cattle and his goats and sheep, and they would drag them like a half a mile away and kill them. So he decides that he's going to go out and find out whatever it is that's killing his animals. And he's deep in the forest looking for something. He sees some tracks, and he turns around. He hears something like a thump behind him, and what it was, a great big old cat. It was evidently, I don't know what I'm saying, cat, I guess a cougar or whatever. It's a very large animal that could have done serious damage, was getting ready to spring on him. Now listen to this. This is the story he tells. Somebody told him that there was a Bigfoot there. It was about 8 feet tall, 500-600 pounds, jumped down from an overlook that was watching, grabbed a hold of that cat, raised it above its head, and brought it down real quick on his head or on his shoulders, and you hear it snap the cat's spine and killed it, and then threw it down in a ravine. Pretty harrowing story, and I'm sure he'll bring that to bear when he comes on the program here next month. But
that's a really good story.
Yeah, so I mean, and totally believable. And these kinds of stories are out there. And of course, I think you also tell a story about something in the past where it was a Civil War. A person was saved.
I found that fascinating, and actually I found it on a YouTube video, and the video was just a voice reading a letter that was written by a Civil War soldier, and it was shown in forest scenes with background sounds, and it sounded authentic. So I started doing some checking. I finally got a hold of the person who had put it up, who had the website. And I was finally able to track down the story. A friend of his was an author and a researcher, and he had been working on Civil War history, and a family had given him or loaned him a letter from one of their relatives who'd been in the Civil War. And the man who had this information didn't want to admit it or go public with it, because he didn't want his reputation as a author and a researcher to be, muddled by the whole idea that he might believe in Bigfoot. But when you read the story, it is so authentic. This man apparently wrote this letter on the old type paper with the old type script, which made it look very authentic. And he left it as a legacy for his family. And he was very seriously wounded in a battle during the Civil War. And the Bigfoot, a clan of Bigfoot actually, dragged him into a cave, and they actually saved his life. And there's a lot of detail. He simply called them the forest people because the terms Sasquatch and Bigfoot did not exist during the Civil War. They really, really took care of him. He was in and out of consciousness. One of the females came in one day, and she had weeds or leaves or herbs or something she'd been chewing on, and then she used it like a poultice on some of his wounds, and it seemed to help. And he eventually got better. Then when he got to the point where he could get up and walk, one of the male Bigfoot helped him get to his feet, and then he used the roots hanging from the top of the cave to balance himself as he tried to learn how to walk again. And one other kind of thing that was just something I don't think anybody would make up. In his corner of the cave, he had pretty well smelled it up because, he was incapacitated. And so one day, one of the Bigfoot came in with a handful of white powder and sprinkled it over the area that he was in. And he made a comment that these creatures knew about lime and how it could be used to suppress smells and odors. So eventually they got him back on his feet, and they took him out of the cave, and they pointed him to a path so he could get back to his people. That's the essence of it, but the wording is so much better than anything I've tried to summarize.
Yeah. What an awesome story. So again, it doesn't seem that there's always the sort of the menace. Now, I like a term I heard you use in one of your interviews as far as communicating with the Bigfoot people, and that is something called mind speak. Some people will use the term telepathy, but and I also like the idea of what you said that humans may have had the ability for, quote, mind speak, or even extrasensory perception, or just being more spiritually aware, but we've turned on these devices and surrounded ourselves with technology that is inhibiting our innate ability to do these things.
I absolutely believe that. I think we're constantly busy and distracted. I mean, I'm guilty of it. You can hardly find anybody who doesn't have a cell phone they're busy with. And if they're not doing they're at their computer or they're watching TV.
Hang on, I got a text here real quick. What were you saying? I'm sorry.
That's the way our world is. And I really do believe that God gave us all these gifts to communicate telepathically, which is, in my opinion, is the same thing as mind speak. It's just a word that the Bigfoot circle seem to prefer. Mm-hmm. And we tune it out. There's been all through history, people have had these spiritual hunches that come in different forms. And if they pay attention to them, they're usually a lot better off. And if they don't, they usually get in some kind of trouble. So, yeah, I think we've lost an ability we were intended to have. And most animals have it. If you watch even cats and dogs, they seem to be very aware of things beyond what many humans are. Mm-hmm.
And I think you also expressed that that perhaps the Bigfoot can detect that. Say if a person's soul is good per se, if you say if he's not a hunter, if he's not a sightseer, but maybe a soul that respects nature and nature's God and is good to animals, that perhaps. And that type of person really isn't looking for Bigfoot anyway. And so it seems that people that are searching for him don't find him, and the people that aren't seem to sometimes find him.
I have found of the people that I've met, the ones that have had nice interactions with the Bigfoot on a continuing type basis have all been not dumb people, but people who live close to the earth, people who live a simpler life, people who are like into organic gardening, people who get quiet, who are very comfortable in nature. The people that go out there with their recordings of Bigfoot and blare it out into the forest, the ones that you see on the TV shows trying to hunt down Bigfoot, I do not think they're ever going to have much success because the Bigfoot try to get away from them as far as they can.
And that's interesting too, because as I mentioned, talking about, again, referring to my upcoming guest, Steve Ishtal, he said the very same thing, that if you're looking for gamesmanship with the Bigfoot, you're not going to find him that way, and you're not going to be able to just go out there and take a picture of him either. Jasper T from the live chat, Mary asked this question: do you research Dogman as well?
I have not. I'm aware of it. I don't know why. At this point, it isn't something I've chosen to explore. Not saying I won't, but I haven't.
Yeah. As far as what you say, leading a simpler life in organic gardening, you really just described last week's guest we had here, Celeste Solom, who lives way up in the mountains of Wyoming and is organic gardener and makes her own champagne and everything. But I didn't think to ask if she's seen Bigfoot out there. You would think that's Bigfoot country out there.
Well, sometimes it pays to ask. I went to do another story for the website about a woman who had found these giant spearheads here in North Carolina. And there are stories about giants having once existed in this area, so I was very interested. And when we went there, I went with Evelyn Gordon, who is also involved with this website. And the terrain where she was living was very similar to where we'd seen Bigfoot before. And so we simply asked her, do you have Bigfoot around here? And she looked kind of startled, and because she really hadn't totally thought about it. And then she said she had a dream about a Bigfoot, and then she and her husband and 2 children went hiking in the woods the next day, and as they were stepping across a creek, there was a giant footprint of a Bigfoot. And so by asking the question, she became much more aware, and she's had a lot of experiences since then. She raises herbs and in her forest-type land. They have quite a number of acres. And one afternoon, she was out checking things before she went home for the night. And the next morning, she woke up, and there was one of those stick tent structures that Bigfoot would make. And above that, there were huge saplings that were arched over the tent structure. These all were created overnight, and that night she had also had a dream about the Bigfoot. So Bigfoot seemed to really try to be careful not to scare people. And many times they'll come in dreams, or they will make themselves known vocally without first appearing to the people, because they know that their size will scare humans. There was a couple who had been studying Bigfoot, and they would go out into the remote parts of the Smoky Mountain National Park, the part where the tourists don't go. And they that night were surrounded by Bigfoot, and they could hear them, and they could hear their foot stomping around, and they were getting this telepathic communication. And the Bigfoot told them that they didn't want to appear to them because they didn't want to scare them. So as long as people don't have a visual sighting, they're much more able to deal with the reality of a Bigfoot. I heard in an interview, you and the interviewer were talking about Big Cove Road down there in Cherokee, North Carolina. I've been on that road, and I didn't see any UN troops there, but the park is dedicated to be a universal biosphere, UN biosphere. And I was talking to my wife today. We were talking about how massive amount of land is dedicated or is taken or assigned by the federal government. Do you think it's possible that our government has known about the Bigfoot for so long, and that these lands were actually meant to allow these Bigfoot to freely roam in their own habitat? No, I don't. I mean, I really do think that has to do with military activity. And I've written about that in another book I've done called Underground Bases Hidden in North Carolina Mountains. There is an underground facility there. We've had a lot of testimony from military people. And I think that is more the reason that it's kind of like being guarded and protected. And people who get out in the woods, like the hunters and the guys on their RV type, what do you call them, ATVs, they've seen military groups from the UN, from Russia, from Poland, Germany. What are they doing out there? Why is that being allowed? I think that's more it than Bigfoot.
Yeah. Susan and I were watching an old Jesse Ventura thing, series that he used to have, and he talked about underground base in Mountain Home, Arkansas. And so we were down there, and man, we're driving up and down the street. We're looking for this secret underground military base in Mountain Home. Didn't find it, but I can tell you, I found one of the best places ever that makes butter pecan shakes, man. So I didn't find the underground base, but man, did I find a great shake.
It's very hard for regular people to be able to find an underground facility. That's for certain.
All right, let's get to a couple more questions coming in for you. And this kind of along those lines. 9 Lives wants to know, what does the Bigfoot eat?
Oh, in the book, and I won't give this away, we did some experiments with what they eat. And we found a place where there was tracks going through the mountain laurel bushes. And we started leaving different kinds of food out there to see what they like. And some of the things they would take and eat, and some of the things they would spit out, and some of the things they would not even touch. But like I said, I have pictures of the different kinds of foods that we put out there, and I make it in a guessing game and then tell people which ones they really preferred.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we were watching a Bigfoot show on Netflix, and the guy claims, that he has video of Bigfoot. So he had night vision. He had 3 apples set on a log, and he had night vision camera pointed right at it. And after some time, you saw like a little bit of hand just reach over there and just pull that apple real gently, right, Dave? Do you see that?
I did not, but I do know that, and I will admit that they do like apples.
Ah, there you go. Hey, by the way, Bear asked a question. How many in the Bear report? He asked how many Americans are in jail. I forgot to ask him what that was. So Bear, if you're listening, give us that number. All right, PGLF 1982 new to the chat there. What methods do people use to communicate with Mr. Foot?
First of all, I don't think the people really get the opportunity to choose these communications. If the Bigfoot choose to be in communication with you, it is usually done telepathically. Almost extensively.
Mm-hmm. I have in the background here various casts of the. Do you know what the one on the right is?
That looks like a human footprint.
Okay, yeah, I think we got this from your website there. So the one in the middle must be the cast. So, but now these must not be proportional, because isn't the typical Bigfoot footprint 18 inches, 16, 18?
The ones that we found around here are 16 inches, but they have, they could be, I've heard as high as 24, but the big ones seem to really be in the far west. I haven't seen them that big around here.
And I heard this question asked of you, and I'm going to ask you again, from this show standpoint. People have said that they follow tracks and then the tracks disappear. How can we account for that?
I wish there was some concrete way that I could say with confidence that the Bigfoot are able to do this, but I do get reports from different people who say that they are able to vanish or just disappear before your eyes. Mm-hmm. That's a hard thing to prove, and maybe they just know how to blend in real well, but I keep hearing from people even like Robin McRae, who I mentioned earlier, who said they have the ability just to suddenly disappear. Mm-hmm. Sort of like these sci-fi movies we grew up on.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting you say that, because that's sort of leads me into what I was getting ready to say. I just heard the story of this government I don't know what he was, worked out in the land, whatever. But anyway, in Maine, the G8 summit was somewhere going to be up there. So they had to go around and do a perimeter check of various things. And so he was with Canadian guards, and they went up there. They were way up on the trail, and they saw 2 Bigfoot, and one of them was approximately 5 feet, and the other one was 6. And they were standing there, and they disappeared right before their eyes. Now, typically what I hear is, when it comes to Bigfoot stories, is people say, they've seen a Bigfoot, and then he's on this ridge, and so he goes over the ridge and then you go over there and you don't see him. So then in that case, you think, well, he ran real fast and you can't get away. But have a tendency to believe that he just disappeared, that there must be some interdimensionality to it, perhaps a chameleon effect like in Predator where he can blend in and you can't see him. The other thing that might be as well, Mary Joyce, is perhaps getting to the mind speak, that it is perhaps that they have this capability to put in your mind, you can't see him.
Yeah, and see, I've heard that too, and that's why it's really hard to come down and say, I know this is the way it is, because everything you mentioned, I've heard more than once from different sources, and they all have a sound of being truthful. So I really don't know an absolute answer on that.
Yeah, I certainly don't mock anybody that say they've seen a Bigfoot. I mean, it's sort of like UFOs. That was roundly ridiculed forever, and now it's like, okay, what, how big's the ship? How many did you see? Rather than, you're a nutcase. And there are more and more stories of Bigfoot, and I'm wondering why the stories seem to be coming out now. I know, of course, the internet age and all this, people can communicate, but it just seems to me that there's more activities in that realm. All right, put Yahweh first.
Part of that is because they are losing space, especially in the eastern part of the country. We humans keep invading their territory. Like the man who got to see the baby Bigfoot on Christmas Eve. The Bigfoot were on his property because the loggers had destroyed so much of the land that they had been living in. So they become more visible. I also have concluded that the Bigfoot here in the more populated areas tend to be more quiet. The ones out in the far west have more space, and you hear about their enormous howling. I think they have to be much more careful in populated areas or human populated areas, not to be bothered and discovered. And I think they hide more.
Yeah, we went to the Branson Answering the Alien Question, and they had a video by George Knapp, and he was talking about Skinwalker Ranch, how that a portal materialized while some investigators were there, and a Bigfoot literally crawled out of the portal. And when he crawled out, then he went running off. So that talks about an interdimensionality aspect to their existence.
Yeah, and see that, like almost everything that's not quite in the realm of normal reality, there's a lot to this. There seems to be a connection with the military with at least some of these Bigfoot. And in the book that I wrote, I include a story about a Bigfoot that was dying, and he was very, very upset. He was communicating with this woman that apparently had befriended him, and the military had, under the guise of becoming friends with the Bigfoot, had taken them and inserted, something into them, and had diminished some of their powers. And he was just mad that they had not been truthful with him, and then they had violated him. Oh. So the military somehow is involved with some of the Bigfoot. I do not think it's a creation of mankind, because the Bigfoot stories go back long before our military became so advanced. But I do think there's something going on with the military and using the Bigfoot. I mean, maybe they even create clone type creatures so that they can carry on things. I really don't know, but there's something going on there that I don't know if we can find out the answer or not. We need to.
Now, when you say they violated them, you mean broke a rule, right? An agreement, that kind of violation?
The military came with the idea that they wanted to be friends with the Bigfoot. Okay. Then when the Bigfoot began to trust them, they did implants into the Bigfoot, and they tried to manipulate them, and they also took away some of their innate abilities, like the ones we've talked about, where they're able to mind speak or telepathically pick up with things. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, but that's fair enough. Let me answer something. So we agreed in the first hour totally that technology is muting our sensibilities, our spirituality, our perception. Is knowing that, can we reverse it by saying using less tech and say spending more time out in the forest?
I would hope so. How's that for an answer?
Okay.
I think we're redeemable.
Okay, well, there's some hope right there. Let's get to a couple questions coming in for you, Mary Joyce here. Put Yahweh first. Have you heard of the ancient Hebrew rock inscriptions in North Carolina?
I have. I tried to pursue that. The remnants of it, I guess, are very hard to get to. I don't know. You may know more about it than I do.
Well, just add that to the list, man. So you got ancient Hebrew rock inscriptions, you got Bigfoot, you got skyships over cashiers, you got underground military bases. What?
Oh, and Cherokee Little People.
And Cherokee Little People, you got everything over there. I mean, I would think you probably got the Mothman and Dogman, all kind of creatures running over there. But now you also, speaking of little people, now you say they exist.
I had never heard of Little People till I moved to North Carolina in 1998. And when I first began to hear the stories, I just thought they were like old tales, old stories that they tell around campfires. And one day, a man came in who was, at that time, he's no longer living, but he was an elderly man, well into his 80s. He was well known in the community because he was a World War II hero, and he'd been a pastor for like 40-something years. So he said, no, they were real. And he, as a young man, had worked on the early construction of buildings at the Western Carolina University, which is in this area. And it seemed like every time they were doing digging projects, they would find these little tunnels that typically were like 2.5 feet wide, maybe 3.5 feet tall. They would be square cut with an arch top. And because I trusted this man and his integrity, I went further with it, and he was able to connect me with a whole bunch of old timers who had done some of these early construction projects. So for a while there, I was spending my Saturdays around kitchen tables interviewing old timers, and the reason I did it was because nobody had recorded their stories, and they were mostly in their 80s, and I figured somebody has to record what they have experienced before it all disappears. And so that's why I wrote the book, Cherokee Little People Were Real.
Mm-hmm. Well, here in the mid, see, you got all that going on here in the Midwest. All we have creatures. We got corn man, we got mosquito man, we got possum Bigfoot, we got weed man. I mean, that's the only kind of action we're getting out here.
Where do you live in? You live in Indiana, right?
Yeah, Indianapolis.
Indianapolis. I used to fly in there. At one time, I worked for a major corporation, and I would fly into Indianapolis and then go to Crawfordsville, where we would have talking children's books printed. And one of the phenomena that I saw there was what goes on in Indiana in the summertime. And there were school buses everywhere, and it was like the job of all the young people to get on these buses and go pick corn during the season. I've never seen so many corn pickers in my whole life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got Bee Man out here. We got Ant Man. I mean, it's a freak show, but it's not doesn't sound as exciting as your area. All right, so here's a question from Susan. What is the lifespan of a Bigfoot?
I don't absolutely know. I've heard that the little people can live to be like 200 years. I do not know about the Bigfoot. From everything that I've been able to piece together from people who are supposedly in the know, is that they can easily live, a couple hundred years. And, that's all I know.
Yeah.
And I do not write about stuff until I can get more concrete information.
Yeah. Somebody, Waldo in the live chat says that he's experienced Snake Woman, also known as his ex. So.
Oh, jeez.
I mean,
well, good luck to you in the pit.
How to get rid of that thing? I don't know, man. Doreen asked a question. Do you know anything about Planet X? I mean, that's kind of out there.
Really interesting that she brought that up, because I just finished typing an interview that I did this week, and it will go in a category on our website called Deep Throat Testimonies. And these are testimonies from people who are in positions where they absolutely cannot let their identity be known. And this person lived in Houston and worked essentially across the street, across the road from the Johnson Space Center. One of the people that this person met was an astrophysicist with NASA. And one day, not immediately, because there had to be a series of conversations before somebody would open up, but this person asked the person from NASA what they thought about Planet X. The answer, which was basically that yes, it exists, and they had seen it, and most of the people at NASA believed that it was a giant spaceship, not a planet. Wow. And the reason that they thought that was because it would not always be in the same place. It was not in a predictable pattern like a planet would be. But that was the conclusion from that particular person. In that story, which isn't even on the website yet, I have like 5 of these NASA secrets that this particular individual shared with me.
And breaking right here. Thank you so much, Mary Joyce. Southern Boy asked this question. It says, Joyce, what's the deal about the, now I'm going to get this wrong, Judacula Rock, not far from Cullowhee, North Carolina?
I'll give you the English pronunciation because I cannot say it in Cherokee. It's commonly called Judacula Rock. And it's about, I'm guessing, maybe 5 miles south of Western Carolina University. It's the largest petroglyph in the southeast of the United States. It has all sorts of markings on it that nobody has been able to decipher. Even the Cherokee don't know what the symbols mean. According to the Cherokee teachings, they originally came from the Great Lakes region and moved to the mountains or migrated to the mountains. And when they came here, they saw these little gardens, but they saw no people. And eventually they saw these little people come out at night, harvest the garden, and take the things back under the ground. These were the little people, and originally the Cherokee called them the moon people because they would come out at night. I don't know where I was going with that, but that's what came to mind.
Well, that was pretty far and pretty good. And that runs right into the next question here. Have you seen a little person yourself?
I have seen, let me put it this way. Bigfoot and little people are very, very hard to photograph. They absolutely will not cooperate. They will run away. They do not want their pictures taken. That is just universal. And so I first began to learn about little people in the around 2000. And it wasn't until 2017 that we got a photo that looks like it might be a little person. And friends of mine that live on one of these mountain ridges where there's just a single gravel road to get to their place have a webcam or a game cam set out by the entrance to their drive. And it caught this little creature off in the distance. And this couple debated a long time about what they were seeing. One of them thought, well, maybe it was a spirit in the woods. And the other one thought it might be a little person. And finally, they shared it with me. And what I did was I enlarged it, and then I increased the contrast. Now, if something is alive and you increase the contrast, it will become magenta. If it's a ghost, it will stay white. This went to magenta, which indicated it was alive, and it looked like a little nude person with dark straight hair in the woods. Wow. And the couple went out there to try to determine how tall it was, and so the man went over by the tree where this creature had been, and the woman took pictures, and he kept getting ducking down more and more and more until he was at the same height as the little person in the photo. And so they estimated it was about 3.5 feet tall. And that's what is typically heard about the size of the little people.
So this thing was naked.
It was in October. I mean, it was in August. It was a very hot season. I don't know if they're always naked, but it sure did look naked in this one.
Isn't part of the Cherokee lore that, say, if you go into the forest and you take something, but you don't leave something, that the little people will come and play tricks on you?
There's all sorts of different stories about them playing tricks. The most common story that you hear is some of the old Indians will still leave food out on their porch for the little people, and if they forget to do it, the roof will be pelted with little pebbles. I've heard that story more than once.
Mm-hmm.
I do hear stories about them being tricksters. I also think that a lot of Cherokee parents probably kept their kids close at home by scaring them to death that the little people would get them.
Mm-hmm.
So it might have been a lazy parent's way of keeping the kids in line.
Might be, but you're kind of saying that they exist. I don't think I want to meet them. I mean, I always seem like a little gremlins.
I don't think there's very many of them.
I think to bite me in the leg, man. That'd be nasty. Hey, all right, here we. I mean, this is the biting kind. That's the kind I don't like. Are you laughing?
Yes, I am.
Well, it's just the biting kind, man. I mean, it's bad out there. All right, let's get a couple more questions. Have you ever heard of a Bigfoot attacking a human? This is from 1-1.
Like I said earlier in the show, the only stories of that nature have been people who have been trying to hunt them or have been shooting at them. Mm-hmm. That's all. That's all I've ever heard. Okay.
All right. And then we have this here. And then what have you been finding out about the underground bases there? What's going on in those bases?
First of all, it's secret. So it's going to be really, really hard for us to find absolutely what they're doing. But one of the people who grew up in a family with high security clearance said that one of these facilities, they were doing experiments with, I don't know, like mind control, and they had the capacity to do wipeout of people's memories. I experienced myself some odd things when I went to this particular facility. The closer I got, and I was with other people in a car, and they experienced it too, but we all felt this unsettling feeling. It's like you wanted to get out of there. And since then, it's become pretty well known that they can use electromagnetic frequencies that kind of work like people repellent, that keep people from wanting to get too close to where their operations are. Mm-hmm. That particular facility was once part of the Department of Defense back during the Cold War. It now is passed off as an astronomical research institute, but it's 6 stories deep, according to 2 people with high clearance security. And it's city size, and it's self-sufficient. It has everything you need to survive. Mm-hmm. There's been some strange things. There's a Christmas tree farm not too terribly far from there, and some of the people who have worked there in the past have seen cages with animals being taken in there. Mm-hmm. So there may be experimentation going on. I'm not sure all the facilities are used for the same reason. Some may strictly be survival places for I don't know, the elite, the people that.
Well, Mary Joyce, what I've always said on this program is that if there's a cataclysmic event and all the elites are going down in those bases, of course, the general population, we're not, they used our tax dollars to build it, okay? And it's got spa treatments down there, yoga studios, all kind of lobster and food. It's a playland down there. But sometime or another, they're going to have to come up, and because we are not invited, I'm going to be waiting for them.
There would be some kind of justice to that, I think.
Well, that's true. I mean, they're just taking our tax dollars. It's a veritable underground wonderland, man. But I tell you what, though, we live a couple miles from Interstate 70, and all last winter we heard booms, boom, boom at night, just constant. And we thought, well, it had to be semis coming through there. And then later it stopped. So there's no way, if it was because the traffic hasn't stopped, nothing's changed. The topography has not changed. So That tells us that whatever was booming is done and moved on. So I'm thinking they're building a straight line over there to the Denver airport. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to drill down, and I'm getting in that tunnel. I'm going to find out what's going on.
We've had this same thing happen here. It's like during the period when facilities are being built, people will feel and hear sounds from deep beneath the ground. There will be things that will feel like minor quakes when there's no actual quake happening in the area. I think it's just an indication of underground building.
Mm-hmm. All right. And here's a question from PGL.
So you disappeared, and all I see now is this face looking through the window.
Well, no, I just thought I'd throw that up there.
I'd rather look at you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Well, besides that, he don't have a hat. Okay. He's a Squatch. Let's get rid of him. Get out of there. All right. So, yeah, man, Bigfoot don't wear cowboy hats. What do you know about the Russian Dyatlov Pass incident? Have you heard of it?
I do not know about it.
Okay. And of course, here's a question here. We just talked about the underground bases. It says, have you ever heard of the case of a guy that got kidnapped by a Bigfoot and he gave him sleeping pills in their meat and waited for them to fall asleep to escape?
No.
Okay. And we have this from Kathy Brown. Does a Sasquatch impregnate women?
At some point, this must have happened, or there's been genetic manipulation of some kind. Dr. Melba Ketchum is the first one who really did DNA research on the Bigfoot, and what they found was the maternal side was human, and the male side was some unknown species. So either through manipulation or through direct contact, there's been some kind of intermingling with humans with some unknown species.
Mm-hmm.
And the work of Melba Ketchum, which was highly criticized in the beginning, has been replicated by other scientists since then. But she took a lot of abuse when she first came out with that information.
Mm-hmm. Put Yahweh first says, was the 2011 earthquake in Virginia a real earthquake?
I've heard the controversies about that. I would not know what to tell you, except some of the supposed earthquakes around here have been from underground building. Mm-hmm. And the best way to determine that is you'd have to really study that area to see if there's any indication of hidden facilities near the site of these quakes.
Mm-hmm. I heard a Bigfoot story about a woman, because you mentioned that lady earlier in the first hour about having interaction with Bigfoot. But I did also hear a story of a woman that says that she actually sort of raised Bigfoot children. They'd come in her house and they would play, and I guess they like SpongeBob. They like to watch that show, but
The only story I've heard of that kind was an old woman. She was from like this bayou country of Louisiana. Mm-hmm. And she found this baby Bigfoot in the muddy part along the bayou, and it was crying and it was alone, and either the parents had died or it had been abandoned. And she took it in, and there was interaction over a number of years with this little guy. He was able to learn a few human words. So that is a story that I have in my book. So I can believe that something along those lines would happen with other people.
Mm-hmm. Now, your website, Skyships Over Cashiers, why did you use the word skyship?
Probably because I got tired of the idea of UFOs. Mm-hmm. And UFO technically is an unidentified flying object, and a skyship indicates something that is very real. You could say spaceship if you want to. We will always use the term UFO because it's been around for so long, but it's really very inaccurate.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen a UFO yourself?
Yes.
What did it look like?
But believe it or not, my first experience seeing UFOs was when I lived in Florida, and I lived on Cocoa Beach between Patrick Air Force Base and the Kennedy Space Center. And because Florida's flat, you actually have a better chance of seeing UFOs there than you do here in the mountains, because here in the mountains you have to be able to look straight up. Like I'm just below the Blue Ridge Mountains, and I've got ridges on both sides. So if I'm not on my back looking up, I'm probably going to miss the UFOs. And one thing that I did notice when I was on the beach is that the UFOs would come around during launches.
Wow. So how'd you end up from Florida to Cashiers, North Carolina?
I don't know if I can give you a simple answer. We kind of get into this world of spiritual communication, And during the time that I lived in Cocoa Beach, I just got this spiritual direction that eventually I would move to North Carolina, but not to worry about it. When it was time, it would become real clear. So I just put it out of my mind. And after I left the beach, I moved to the Ocala Forest, which is also in Florida. And there was a big drought this one year, and there were 4 roads into where I lived in the forest. And I came back from a trip, and the first road in, a tree had fallen and blocked it. The short story is that 3 of the 4 roads were blocked by these trees that had just fallen in the dry sand. And I kind of took that as a sign between that and all the fires that maybe it was time to get out of Florida. And that's when I moved to North Carolina.
So, I mean, so did you like look on a map and say, look, oh, here's a place in the forest?
No. Actually, with the idea of North Carolina, when I started to think about the actuality of, working, my first intention was to teach at the Cherokee school.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you answered that question, because I've asked a couple of guests before about moving, and not too long ago, there's the internet kind of goes in cycles, or people who claim to be prophets or seers, they'll say, hey, you better go to your, you better find your safe space, and a lot of times they even say Ozark, and because it's the ark, the ark of safety, and I mean, I've seen videos and DVDs, people saying, here's why God wants people to move to Arkansas, because it's the ark, and it goes through these phases.
And there's so much, I know you hear so much of it that you just kind of tune it out. Mm-hmm. I mean, what are you going to do with it? And some of these people have gone off, and some actually well-known people have gone off and chosen to live in a cave, thinking the world was going to end in, let's say, 2012, and it didn't end. Mm-hmm. And so there they have been living a very uncomfortable life in a cave somewhere, when it was unnecessary. Mm-hmm. So if the world is going to be so bad, well, maybe it's just better to go ahead and check out, rather than crawl in a hole someplace.
Just check out. And we've had some actual guests on this program that they're moving out of the country, and some of them have, and so I guess they're enjoying Muslim land over there in Europe. All right, let's get to another question here. I see it's coming through here. And we talked about, what about this? Russian hikers who cut their way out of a tent. Oh yeah, I remember this story here. There's a story of Russians that they were in the wintertime, and they were undressed, and they died in mysterious circumstances. You've heard that story?
The only one I'm familiar with is in Antarctica. I'm not familiar with the one you're referring to.
Okay, and speaking of Antarctica, what's going on there?
Oh my God. I've done a whole bunch of articles on that. That even came out in this interview that I mentioned that I just finished writing up today. And this person who's giving me this information said that one day this man came into where this person worked, and he was like shaky, and he was frantic, and he was, terribly stressed. He looked like he hadn't slept in, 3 days. And it eventually came out that he had worked for NASA, which was basically across the street from where this person worked. And he had been fired, or he had quit. And he told this person that's talking to me that there's things, everybody's going down to Antarctica because they're very concerned about this Planet X. And I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that's going on.
A lot of
I've done stories about all the people who've gone down there. We have world leaders from many countries who've gone down there. We've had our Secretary of State. We've had a former astronaut. They all went flocking down there. Why? The reason I'm hesitating is there's just so much to talk about. There's actually, there is like an underground river. There are underground caverns beneath the ice in Antarctica. There are military facilities beneath the ice. The Nazis have been active down there since actually before World War II. There are reports of them interacting with a species of aliens I want nothing to do with, called the reptilians. That the advanced technology that the Nazis had gotten during World War II was from these aliens. It's just very, very extensive. Probably too much to try to squeeze in tonight.
Well, I'll tell you what, I never got an invite to go to Antarctica, but I mean, a lot of people speculate you got your Nazis down there, and you got your reptilians and such making deals. But now somebody else said that the royal family's going down there, but I would think Prince Andrew is probably going down there because he's been identified as a rapist at Epstein's Island, so maybe he wants to escape down.
I'm sure it's too cold for him.
Yeah. Ooh. All right. No, that's true, man. You know, a lot of people go down there. I wouldn't be surprised if all the Bushes go down there and Obama and everybody going down there.
Well, John Kerry went down there as a Secretary of State. The leaders of New Zealand and the South American countries, even what we would call the Pope of the Eastern Church, or the head of the Eastern Church, went down there the same year that all these other well-known people were going down. What's interesting is just before the leader of the Eastern Church went to Antarctica, he met for the first time with the Roman Pope for several hours before they went down there. So they were having a huddle about things that are going on down there. That is the only place where you can really see this Planet X. You have to be in the southern hemisphere. So
now, see,
it's connected with that, and it's connected with the activity beneath the Antarctica.
I always say poop on the Pope, man, but I don't know why everybody's going down there making deals and such. But a lot of people say that it's going to play out in some sort of end time scenario, but that could also be a place of escape for some kind of cataclysmic event where they're trying to depopulate the Earth. Now, in the event that the New World Order, whoever it is, that's trying to depopulate the Earth for their own convenience and enjoyment, do you think that the Bigfoot would know that and they would join forces with the rest of us to fight the New World Order?
What a question. I have no way of answering that.
That's why they call this show The Edge.
Yeah, well, you got me on the edge there.
Wow. No, we need to join forces, and I think if we do, we got a real good chance against them. All
I can say is the Bigfoot have many times tried to help people, like the story you told earlier about the big panther.
Yeah, right. I mean, so there are stories that are coming out as well, too. And I like that how it seems that they seem to know intrinsically who is a sort of a good person and who's not. And I'm going to, I've been wanting, and, for a long time to try to sort of reconnect spiritually, and not that I'm not, but just to increase my spiritual awareness, I guess you could say, my perception. I try to always look around. I always believe that there's more to wherever you're at. There's more that's going on than just the mundane event you're involved with. I always feel like there's a supernatural aspect that you can find if you just are aware. The Bible says something about having your senses exercised by reason of use. So I'm thinking if we could reuse and try to reconnect with all the abilities that God gave us and designed into us, then I think we'd have better lives all around.
Can't argue with that one.
I mean, obviously the Bigfoot's having a good life. They're trying to raise families out there, trying to make ends meet, and then people want to hunt them down and such. And occasionally, you hear a story where some guy says, went out and shot one and such. Then you get the hoaxes. I remember a couple of years ago, there was pictures of a Bigfoot in a freezer. I mean, it's like, okay, well, if it really was a Bigfoot, why'd you do it? Why would you kill such a creature? And I don't think I personally don't put them in the animal category, and I don't put them in the primate category. I think they're in their own category. What do you think?
They might qualify as a primate. I mean, that's a pretty broad category as far as I know. Don't know. That's all I can tell you.
All right. So what are you studying now? Was your research in Antarctica, Planet X? What?
Oh, we've got several things going. Well, like I said, the story that I just did is about the secrets of NASA. I don't really plan things out. What happens is it seems like the stories come to me, and that's why I think sometimes we're guided by spirit to write up the things that we do. How in the world do I get some of these stories? I'm amazed at them. I mean, how did this person suddenly appear in my life to give me this story about the secrets of NASA? How did I connect with this old man not too long before he died, who began to convince me that there really are little people? I mean, I didn't go out looking for that. In fact, every book that I have done, I didn't set out to write a book. It's just I found this fascinating information, and then I would find out nobody else had done that particular take on the subject, or nobody had ever recorded it, and then it would end up in a book. Not because I started out to write a book. You know, a lot of people just want to write. That's not where I'm coming from. If anything, I guess I must be a bit of an educator. I want to share the information that I learned.
So do you think your move from the Florida area to Cashier's Mountain area sort of spurred maybe it set free some of your innate abilities to perceive or to be drawn to different people that had information that you need to know?
Well, even down there, I was able to connect with people. For example, when I lived on the beach, I got to know people from NASA down there. And one of the things that surprised me was I became friends with a man who lived down the beach, and he was an engineer with NASA. And one day he arrived at my house with this box of books, and it was a collection of Alice Bailey books. Now, she is an old she's into theosophy. I'm not even pronouncing things right. And the thing that surprised me was this was like spiritual teachings from the really Eastern perspective. And he said that the people at NASA were very familiar with those kind of things. So here you have engineers. They're the last people you would think would be reading that kind of stuff, especially if they're working at NASA. So I found that a bit of a surprise. So there were interesting things that happened down there too.
Yeah, my mother-in-law worked at NASA.
Which one?
Which NASA?
Yeah, or which location?
Houston.
Houston, and that's the story I just did is all based out of Houston.
Wow. Well, see a lot of stuff going on down there. Except I'm still not sure if we went to the moon, but that's for another night. maybe the Bigfoot went to the moon. All right. So if a person wanted to find a Bigfoot or see a Bigfoot, you think that basically should not try to find him and let the Bigfoot find them?
The only thing I can think of is that if you really want to meet one, you have to be in areas where they're more likely to live. And you would just have to go camping. You would just have to do things in a very natural way. And I don't know, send out mental messages that you'd like to meet them. I think that would be the closest hope anybody would have of actually making that connection work.
Or maybe put some food out there for them to eat.
Possibly. But you'd have to have a real good idea of where they were.
So, Mary Joyce, do you consider yourself a spiritual person?
I do.
All right. And have you been brought up in any particular religion, or how do you work out your spirituality?
I was brought up in a very liberal church, but I've been brought up Christian. I do not think that I think churches get off base too many times. I think they become something that is too organized, that wants to tell everybody what to do and how to do it. And too many Christians are too judgmental. And I have much more regard for people who simply identify as being spiritual. There was a sign at some church, I don't know where it was, and it said something like, God would prefer a kind atheist to a judgmental Christian. And I think there's too much judgmental things. And when you put your mind in a box, you limit yourself. And I don't think God ever intended us to be limited. We've been born with curiosities. He gave us that curiosity. Why would he want to stop you from growing and learning? And there's too many Christians that think everything there is to know is in the Bible as it exists today, and there's nothing else to learn. And I just don't buy that. Mm-hmm. There's also people who believe that everything out there in the universe or every other life form is evil. Now, I agree that I would not want anything to do with some of the aliens, like the reptilians. But at the same time, I can't imagine that the God that we are taught to believe in would only create life here on the earth and would have nothing to do with life forms in other parts of the universe. Earth is just a speck in the universe, and this cannot be all it is. And if this is all that God's created, then we have greatly limited God, because I think we are not the epitome of what life should be.
Mm-hmm. Well said there. And it's also people in the live chat agree with you on some of those points there. But conversely, would you say, now as far as, say, judgmental, is it judgmental to say that just to go out there with a current theme that's kind of out there in American culture of what is it called, tranny story hour, drag queen story hour? Would that, from a Christian standpoint, would that be judgmental to say they don't want a drag queen telling stories to children? Is that judgmental?
I would not have my child be educated that way if I had a choice. But if somebody wants to be a drag queen, then you have to, at the same time, let people live their own lives. And we all will face the end of life. We will all have to deal with, the lives we've chosen to live. And I don't think it helps anybody if everybody else is dealing with the lessons that each one of us has.
Mm-hmm. So, but to the question, is it judgmental to say, that's not acceptable behavior? I mean, is there a line? I mean, because not judging, does that mean there's no line? Because as soon as you say there is a line, you start going into judgment.
Now I feel like I'm talking to an attorney.
Just no cowboy.
I don't know if I can give you a satisfactory answer. No, I wouldn't have my child go to that kind of circumstance as a protection for the child. But I'm not going to. There is a soul within everyone, even a drag queen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we can't ever forget that.
Right.
And so I don't know what else to say.
Okay. All righty. Well, see, that's good. Those are just thoughts thrown out there, because some people accuse you of but see, now it'd be different to say a drag queen can't be a drag queen, but saying the drag queen can't go in there with children and do twerking and stuff and show body parts. I think that is acceptable judgment to say. So all judgment is not bad judgment. So I think
I'll accept your point.
Yeah, you're just making a distinction between judgment. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, it's been really enjoyable having you on the show, Mary Joyce. Any final thoughts you'd like to say about Bigfoot's Skyships Over Cashiers, your website, book, anything? You go right ahead.
Okay. The website is called Skyships Over Cashiers. Cashiers is spelled like a cashier at the grocery store. Mm-hmm. All of the books I have in print, you can read a little bit about them on the website. Open up Editor's Corner. Scroll way down to the bottom, and there's a little bit about each one of the books. They're all available on Amazon. And the Bigfoot, of the ones that I've done, the Bigfoot one, which is brand new, is really catching people's interest because it is presenting such a different perspective on the Bigfoot. And many people are interested in the subject, but they're sick and tired of just hearing about footprints and howling and throwing rocks. And like I said, there's a lot of interest, and I would encourage people to give it a chance.
Yeah, and really, and that's why I really wanted to have you on the show, because you bring such a different perspective. We've had a number of Bigfoot people on the program. We'll have a lot more, and so I'd like to get all perspectives. The thing is, what I found, Mary, is that nobody has all the truth. And so I think everybody has a little bit of a nugget of truth. And if we talk to each other, even if people disagree, they need to learn to talk to each other, because they may get the truth from somebody they don't even like. So I try to allow this Edge show to be a platform for all points of view.
And it looks like you have a good following, because you're getting quite a response from your audience in the what do you call it, in
Chat.
the chat room.
Yeah, they're a lively crew. We love them, man. And they love you too as well. Mary, Joyce, thank you for coming on the program. Can we have you on again sometime?
Certainly. I enjoyed talking to you. You take care of yourself.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.